We have joining us to help us understand this more, the Chief Executive Officer at Cowry Asset Management Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, joins us virtually. Mr. Chukwu, good morning. Welcome to the program. So when you see this message, when they're asking for deepening of reforms, and then we also hear the word transparency, and then we hear inclusive growth. When you put all of this together, Mr. Chukwu, what message is the IMF trying to tell Nigeria and other major economies on the continent?
Okay, what I would say is that when you talk of deepening reforms, and they are talking of deepening reforms and referring to transparency and inclusive growth, you know, a lot of African countries, particularly Nigeria, has been engaged in significant fiscal reforms. We've seen the reform of the downstream oil sector. We've seen some tax reforms. These are fiscal spaces. And at the monetary space, we've also seen a lot of reforms by the monetary authorities. But those reforms have not really translated into improvement in the standard of living of average citizens. We've seen inflation, though inflation had dropped about 15.4%, but then we also still see that an average Nigerian household, if you use Nigeria as a typical case of what obtains in most African countries, are still really in an increasing level of poverty. So when IMF is saying deepening reforms to ensure inclusive growth simply means that as those at the higher echelon of the economic ladder are seeing are referring to improvement in the fiscal environment, it should also affect those at the rung of the ladder. An average citizen should be able to get jobs, should be able to see that their standard of living is improving, should be able to consume what they used to consume the previous years. So in terms of deepening reforms to make for inclusive growth, to achieve that, the reforms must be productivity oriented, so that you see the reforms engender or stimulate improved productive activities that will create jobs for those at the lower rung of the ladder. And they will talk of transparency. And I also say that, assuming we use Nigeria, which is our country, as a proof of concept, or as a reference point, bear in mind that IMF and World Bank had actually made reference to the opaque nature of our fiscal implementation records, particularly as it relates to budget implementation. They've made reference to the fact that capital allocations have not been fully disbursed. They made reference to the fact that even the process of acquiring or contracting some critical fiscal infrastructure did not go through the best practices or the best global practices. They made mention of our reporting, the frequency of reporting of budget performance, and the accountability of the fiscal authorities to the legislature in terms of budget performance. And they feel that if you have higher level of transparency in terms of budget reporting and budget performance, government revenue, and government expenditure, it will engender higher level of confidence among citizens to comply with their responsibility, their civic responsibilities as it relates to paying taxes and other aspects of obedience to regulations and laws.
So, I mean, that's a whole lot you have captured together, Mr. Chukwu, and thank you so much for that. But let's start with the inclusive growth. So a lot of people have said that they really do appreciate the reforms that this administration has brought on board, but it was not well thought out, and it seemed to have been done in a hurry. Of course, we know the president made the announcement on the very first day he was, called into office. So when we see the interventions that the government is putting in place now, social interventions mostly, do you think that perhaps that could make up for this fear or gap of driving the gains of the reforms down to the lower part of a social ladder?
Well, most of the reforms are fundamental reforms. The palliatives are naturally temporary. The palliatives are basically what they are, palliatives. Administering pain relief to a person who has a fractured leg. You need to eventually fix the fractured leg to avoid the pain. The pain will just be the paracetamol or the pain relief medication will just be what it is, pain relief. It doesn't cure the broken bone. So what the government should focus on is how do we strengthen the economic environment, the economic system, the economic structure, as to stimulate growth in productive activities. So that would mean that beyond the palliatives which the government is trying to do, the palliative does not cure the ailment. It is an economy that is productive at reasonable cost that will cure the dislocation or the fracture. And I give you a proof of what I mean. If we focus on building infrastructure, the resources we have, we're using to build infrastructure at competitive cost, particularly power infrastructure, so that power is available at reasonable cost to an average household, to average producer. You will see that the cost of energy alone will be a pull for industries to come back to the country. Energy alone. Then you add that to road infrastructure, improvement in governance framework, regulations, improvement in logistics supply, particularly the seaport, the process time it takes to take goods out of the seaports or bring goods, ship goods out of Nigerian seaports. If we improve on those things, you will naturally have a pool. That pool will attract investors who will come and set up manufacturing outfits here. And those manufacturing outfits will employ Nigerians. And those Nigerians will earn income. They will not need to rely on handouts. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is human capital development, quality of education, availability of education at cheap cost, at reasonable cost, so that most households can send their children to quality education with appropriate curriculum. In the next 10 years, you'll find out that the children of these people who you are giving handouts, instead of giving them free education, quality education, will be graduates. If they are graduates, they could work here or they could work elsewhere, and then they earn income for the family. So that's become an enduring approach to put people out of poverty. It has to be done from the quality of labor we produce, as well as the quality of our economic productive environment that will attract not just foreign investors, but local investors to go into real sector productive activities.
So talking about accountability now, leakages has been, counted as perhaps one of the reasons we're not enjoying the reforms as much as we should. And there you talked about the areas or levels of accountability. From your perspective, if we were to have a government that is really accountable and block at least 90% of leakages, what would that look like? What areas do you think could be focused on to bring us to that level?
You know how we look at it, when you talk about accountability, we have to look at it from the three arms of government, right from the local government. And I think the local governments are one of the weakest links in the Nigerian federation structure, because we say we have three federating units. Today, I live in Lagos. I can barely see any sign there's a local government function in Lagos. And that applies to almost everywhere in the country, not just Lagos as an exception. You see the households or the residents are taking care of their debts. They're cleaning their drainage. These are the minimum the local government can do. People are putting street lights in front of their houses. These are what local government should do. People are paying for security men to protect their neighborhood. People are mounting gates to protect their neighborhood. So where is the local government? So that's one aspect. So you don't have accountability at the lowest tier of governance. Then you now move to state government and federal government. At the state government, a number of state governors just go to Abuja, pick disbursement of their FAC allocations, and then go to their state, pay salaries to their friends, and go back to Abuja. And then you see minimal governance. And then you also have we have legislature capture, both at the federal and the state levels, where the legislature have become an appendage of the executive. So the critical question they need to ask: let's critically review the budget. Let's review the implementation of the budget. The budget is an instant law. If it is breached, then it becomes an impeachable offense or a sanctionable offense that the executive must be held accountable to. We no longer have that in the country. So the instrument, the structures that are supposed to make for that level of accountability have been weakened over time, and that has made whoever is an executive in any of the arms of government to become like a traditional ruler or a headmaster who does no wrong, and everybody is obedient to his authority. Even the headmasters do not have that level of authority. In fact, it becomes an absolute monarch that has authority over everything. Unfortunately, that's where we are. But hopefully, we will evolve out of it. The society is an evolving society. We will evolve. Probably these are part of the transformations or the transitions to our democratic maturity.
Well, hopefully, let's keep hope alive. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, the Chief Executive Officer at Cowry Asset Management Limited. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.